Welcome to the Sonic Shaman Show, home of the Coffee Connect and Conscious Connections. The show is dedicated to empowering you to perceive, know, be, and express your unique voice in this world without the fear of judgment of others through healing, coaching, and educational services. In each episode, Hank and his guests offer tools, techniques, and inspiration to help you step into your potency. Now, here is your host, Hank Setala.
Good morning, everyone, to what is going to be the Power of Possibilities podcast. Just haven't gotten around to recreating some of the introduction videos and things, but I am here with Heather MacMillian, a certified facilitator of Access Consciousness. Good morning, Heather. How are you?
Good morning. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I found this picture for today that says "Dare to be different" with this one beautiful orange flower amongst all the other flowers. And I messaged Heather. I'm like, oh my gosh, look, it matches. Well, now I have to put up the actual picture, but the dress that she had on, or the outfit she had on during the when she took her photo, matches this flower like perfectly. At least it does in my eye. I am a little bit colorblind though, so I might be a little bit off.
I love it. Yeah, it matches.
But anyway, welcome everyone. And we love this to be interactive. So if you like to make a comment, if you have a question, if anything's showing up in your world, we can go down literally any rabbit hole that you'd like to open the door to. So please contribute. Today is, though, all about daring to be different. And when I think of this, I think of Dr. Dain Heer when we talk about daring to be different, because he is like one of the most aware yet authentically strange people you'll ever meet.
Yeah. And I mean, how much fun can we have with this topic? And what would you guys like to know about? What would you like to talk about?
Absolutely. Let's see. Where was I going with that? I already had a thought.
Dr. Dain Heer, yes.
Dr. Dain Heer. Well, and this will be one of the books that I do book readings for. For those of you who haven't been aware, I also stream where I just take an Access Consciousness book and read through it. I've been doing Money's Not the Problem, You Are. I'm going to also be adding to that list, like Being You, Changing the World. There's all these amazing Access books that we're able to offer like additional resources around. So very much looking forward to that. But let's talk about, I think, a great place to start from an Access world. Well, one, you already said how much fun can we have, but give us another question.
Well, what are the infinite possibilities for today? And what would it take for today to be greater than yesterday?
Ooh, love that question. There's one of the Access certified facilitators. It's one of the people that's like a staple in Access is Simone Milasas. Mm-hmm. And she has this one thing that they talk about. I'm sure Gary talks about it too, called tall poppy syndrome. Mm-hmm. And it's actually a great energy to start with of where we resist stepping into our uniqueness and our potency. So maybe talk a little bit, let's start the conversation with, the tall poppy syndrome.
Well, I mean, that's something that, in certain cultures, it's where if you're the tall poppy, if you're the one that stands out as too different, too unique, or creating so much more than other people, that you're going to be chopped down, that you're going to be cut off. And for how many of you guys listening or watching to this, was that the case for you? That when you were younger, you were creative and generative and always just following the energy and really joyful and happy. And maybe you got punished for it. Maybe you got judged for it. So at what age did you stop being you? Did you stop creating everything that's possible for you?
Yeah, and that's like a huge thing. Like you have, when you're real little, parents are supportive of you being different for the most part. But then as soon as you hit like a certain age in school, it's almost like all I want to do is blend in. All I want to do is be, run with the pack and be accepted. But that is like one of the things where we start to give up, at least in my view, our willingness to be unique and different in the world because we're too concerned about other people's judgments. So where do we start with that? Like, getting rid and shedding some of these places where we've gotten stuck with other people's ideas about us and needing to be accepted and all that go there. There's a lot there, actually.
Oh my gosh, there's so much there. Yeah. I mean, wow. I mean, what if you know what's true for you and what actually works for you? And what knowing did you have of that as a child? And when and where and for whom did you give that up? I mean, one example for me is that when I was little, I didn't enjoy regular traditional gym class, like the dodgeball, that kind of stuff, So they actually let me and another kid run a cross country around the school grounds. And it was so joyful. It was so fun. And it was weird to the other kids that we weren't playing in the regular gym class. We were just running around enjoying that cross country running. And then there was a certain point when, like you said, I gave that up and just was being normal and fitting in with everyone else. So anywhere anyone put on you that you had too much ease, that you were getting things that were special or that weren't fair to others, that's a big one. The fairness, judgment, and point of view. Would you be willing to destroy and uncreate all of that?
Yes.
Right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all 9 shorts, boys, and beyonds. And for those of you who haven't been tuning in when Hank and I have been talking on these podcasts so far, that is the Access Consciousness Clearing Statement. And it's designed to bring up energies and clear them and to bypass your intellect, your logic, reason, and to really get at the energetic considerations and limitations that are keeping you from being that happy kid that would like to create and generate an amazing life.
Yeah. And for our topic today, one thing, if you're new to all of this stuff as well, if you go to accessconsciousness.com and just look for any bars night anywhere local to you, all the things that we're talking about today, one of the greatest contributions to shifting and changing that would be while you have your bars run, which is 32 points on the head, there's one called the Implant Band that, like, as soon as I started talking about this, like, I could just feel this energy building up. It's like, well, if I didn't have headphones on, I would be running my Implant Band, but I can't, it's being blocked.
Totally. I can do it.
But if you can get your bars run, like, that is a huge place for not just the topic we're talking about today, but for all the considerations that you were stuck with while growing up, from friends, from society, from work, from everything. And it's basically like highlighting all the folders in your computer that you don't need anymore and hitting the delete button. And everybody who has an older computer know how it starts to run sluggish and things like that. You have to defrag the hard drive or, do a factory reset. It's like factory resetting your brain.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And then you have so much more ease and space and possibility. That's not something we could do on a stream like this, but there are a ton of resources all over the globe, accesses in so many countries, that be a kindness to you and your body, and go get your bars run.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. As you're talking about that, I'm like, wow, what would it take?
And if you happen to go locally, this is a fun story about abundance. We were talking about it yesterday. There was somebody that's been catching my streams, which I've had over a year now of streaming. My anniversary, I think, was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I had started streaming a year ago with the whole thing of COVID, and started creating content to just create more space and joy and possibilities for people. But somebody who's been kind of following, they happen to be flying into the area, and I'm doing like a late night bar session, because as soon as they can get to the office after they come in is like 10 something at night. And so I'm meeting them, doing like a 2-hour session for them, running their bars. And that's just like, passing through the area. Like, how cool is that he realizes how much possibility there can be and wants to make sure he gets his bars run. But you don't have to come to us. So you can also just go to the Access site and find somebody local to be able to do that for you and your body.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I mean, I noticed for me, after I started getting my bars run, that there was this sense of being different, and that I was willing to allow more ease in life. And that's part of, the conversation that we started with, of like, at what age and for what did you give up life really being kind of ease?
Absolutely. And just a reminder, folks, if you have any questions or comments, or if you have a little story about how you were programmed to not be different or broke out of that programming, we'd love to hear that. If you want to make a comment, we can definitely share those. Did you find, besides gym class, was there any other personal experiences that you can see where you were just conforming to everyone? And I can definitely go into one for corporate. I'll share that first while you think of one.
Yeah.
I remember when I started working, because I have 10 years of experience in banking before I started doing this work. And one of the person who trained me, he's just like, here's the trick to this job. He's like, you got to run in the middle of the pack. You don't want to be too low, where you're going to be on the radar. Don't want to be too high where they expect too much of you. Like literally run in the middle of the pack. I'm getting goosebumps as I say that. Like just like intentionally being trained in the job. You just run in the middle so you're not noticed.
Wow. Wow. Oh my gosh, that's exactly what we're talking about. I mean, and that was kind of my experience when I got out of college and I started working for a consulting firm. Like everything, we were being programmed, we were put through this really long training program, and it was all about how to be a normal and average corporate, an appropriate corporate person.
Yeah. Ooh. And my friend Param says this. He's a professor at Baldwin Wallace, and he says that the definition of corporate efficiency is getting the most out of somebody with putting the least amount into them.
Wow. Yeah. And it's so different than one of the conversations in Access Consciousness, which is the tools that I have the great privilege and honor of facilitating, and Hank facilitates them as well. And it's called benevolent capitalism, which is really about creating and making choices that benefit everyone, including ourselves.
That's the second time that's come into my role now. The first time was, if you know Sean Phillips, who's somebody who also practices Access. I think you might have met him at least.
Yeah, he took Talk to the Entities with me in Cincinnati. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. I didn't realize that you met him, but it wasn't through the center. But so for those of you who don't know, like one of my old companies, Holistic Health and Healing LLC, the partnership, we just didn't create well. And so that was retired. I like saying the entity was retired. It's still around. It just, it has different priorities now in its retirement years. And I created something else called Emergence of Being. And while I was doing that, I was like, well, what would be fun? And I created this whole thing called the generative contributor model, where all the practitioners are called contributors. Some are Access, some aren't. There's a whole group of people. And I was sending it to Sean. He's just like, oh, that's benevolent capitalism. Like, benevolent, what is this? And so he sent it to me, and like the model that I was creating, I had tapped into that without ever having heard about it. And then I'm like, wow, this would have been so much easier if I had known about this beforehand, to set everything up kind of in this win-win-win scenario.
Yeah. And I mean, what can we all create? What can we choose today that will make not only our lives, but the world a greater place?
Definitely. I love that. Of course, my Access book isn't close enough again, but part of the whole thing with Access is Access consciousness. The point of it is to create a greater set of possibilities to which all mankind can thrive.
Yeah.
But we can say person kind if we want to be politically correct.
Exactly. Exactly. But I'm, as we're talking, I'm remembering so many funny stories from when I worked in a corporate environment that were all about fitting in and all about not being different. There was, even when I worked at this consulting firm, there was a 2-page dress code that was all about being appropriately dressed, coiffed for being in this environment. And people were actually reprimanded for wearing things that were too different. And I mean, how do you guys express your own difference, your own uniqueness? And everywhere you ever made wrong for that, would you be willing to destroy and uncreate it all?
Yes.
Right, wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all 9 shorts, boys, and beyonds.
I'm laughing because at the bank, we had casual days occasionally. And in order to participate, like depending on your level in the company, you'd have to pay money and it would go towards a charity. So like usually United Way or something like that. But like I have to tell the story because I was an evil little elf. And if you want to know what elf stands for, you got to go watch the Money's Not the Problem Yours stream. Yeah. And right at the end of the day, me and my one friend Dave, as we were leaving, we were like, all right, casual day tomorrow. And of course there wasn't one. And then the next day we would see how many people ended up coming in dressed casually because we said that at the very end, because people were, not being aware. And anyway, just a fun little story around that popped up. Amber was sharing that she broke out of that programming when she became disabled, which happened about 5 years ago. And boy, did I pick the wrong time to get sick. I wish it was more positive reasons, but people treat disabled people like crap no matter what they do. So I adopted a F it attitude. I think that was correct. Thank you for making it family friendly here. Or maybe Facebook did that. I don't know. But
Yes.
but I might as well be me attitude, or be my attitude. That is something that we take for granted a lot of times, that until you're put into a situation where you see how somebody's treated with a particular set of circumstance, like sometimes it's out of our viewpoint. And so it's really a great gift if you could say, well, what would it be like, or like being able to get a taste of the energy without having to fully experience it. But thank you so much for sharing that. And hopefully that it's continued to, once you had that shift in awareness and broke out of conformity, turning that into a possibility. Because that would be the next thing, is it would be easy to enter like the pity party kind of energy. But what would it take then, once you realize that you're being treated differently, to shift that and create despite the adversity that people are treating you with?
Yeah, and I mean the access tool that I love so much, that we can be a gift to ourselves with and to others, is allowance. And allowance is where everything is just an interesting point of view. There's an amazing book written by Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness, called The Place.
I will find and post a link to it in just a moment with that.
Yay. That would be an amazing topic for one of these streams, to talk about The Place. It's in my interesting point of view, one of the most remarkable pieces of literature, and it's, let's put it in quotes, fiction, but it's about this guy who has an accident, and when he wakes up from it, he has no idea where, when, why, and how he is. And he's in the place. So it's really magical. And I invite you to read it. It's not very long. And the audio version, read by Gary himself, is just amazing. The first time I listened to it, I was driving, and I had to pull over because I was crying so hard, because it was just such an acknowledgement of me, the being who I really am, beyond any image facade, who I'm pretending to be or whatever. It was just beautiful. And I often refer to that book and the energy of it when I talk about allowance, because the beginning of the book starts with the main character being in a stream, and he's being that energy, and he's allowing everything to flow around him, and he's just being him.
Awesome. I just see some more comments popping up, so we'll get to those in a moment. I did post a link to The Place, and
Thank you.
And I had one of those energy poofs happen right at the end of that, and I didn't know if you had finished your thought or not, because I for a second wasn't there.
I know, I was kind of taking us to the stream with Jake, and
oh,
that is the energy of allowance, of like, what if we could be that for ourselves and for others, and what gift is that to our bodies and to the earth when we do choose to be that allowance. And everything that comes up is just an interesting point of view. It's not right or wrong, good or bad, true or real. It just is an interesting point of view, and it can flow around us like we're the rock in the stream. We don't get washed away, which is where we, align and agree. We're not, fighting against it, letting it diminish us, which is the resistance and reaction side of the polarity. We're just being that beautiful rock in the stream.
I love that analogy. And I was really saddened when I first heard that in the Being You book, because I had been using that analogy, and then I'm like, damn it, he stole my thing. No, I'm kidding. but I had been using that example as a rock in a stream with allowance. Like, if you resist and react, you get washed downstream. If you align and agree with, you get washed downstream. Like either way, you either get whittled away, but you end up getting caught up with the reactionary consciousness of the world instead of being able to be a responding consciousness. And Amber, I'll go ahead and put these up. And but now that she said she started to come see me, this is like one of the people that I've worked with, but she's like, she's working on it. The positive, she's had a lot of improvements. At first, she wasn't walking when she first started seeing me. And now she hasn't used her wheelchair since June. How does it get any better than that?
Does it get any better than that?
Yeah. And then
Beautiful.
Also, that she doesn't think I ever really did conform to fit in with my peers. I'm so glad I didn't. I love my uniqueness even more now that I'm not dealing with bullies.
Yeah.
And, my thing with growing up is I was so out there that even if I tried to conform, I still couldn't. Yeah, because I was, you can't not be you to some degree. Like no matter how much you try to fit in, you're always going to be you. You're just going to be you wearing a ghillie suit, which is what the inspiration I wanted to bring us to is this whole idea that Dr. Dain gave us with these ghillie suits, which are these like camouflage suits that hunters wear to blend in. And I believe there was a whole bunch of facilitation around this concept.
Yeah, it's really funny. That was the kind of an awareness they got in Access a couple of years ago is that, what if we put on these ghillie suits of class or ghillie suits for whatever and Google ghillie suits. They are so funny looking. I found a whole website at the time that's devoted to them. And they're like these big furry suits or like suits that make you blend into the foliage.
We'll bring them up here. I can share the screen here. We got tons of ghillie suits to show you, but like just picture this, like what ghillie suit, which you're about to see, are you using to fit into the conformity that you're choosing, and what would it take to break out of that is kind of like the energy where I was going with that. So, here we go, ghillie suits. And then we got to add it to the stream. This is just a few types of ghillie suits. If you want to take a look at like how crazy these are, like you see this person looks like a pile of leaves, and they're just like crazy. Like the amount that you blend in.
Star Wars.
Yeah, like Chewbacca, that's like a ghillie suit, except he's against something that he doesn't blend in with. So what would it take for you to wear your authenticity like Chewbacca out in the world where everybody notices you instead of wearing a different person's ghillie suit and conforming to the world that they want you to fit into? I think that made sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how many ghillie suits are you wearing? Like how many ghillie suits are you still functioning from childhood? Like, I mean, depending on where you grew up in the world, like, are you wearing a ghillie suit that makes you blend in and be normal with the people of where you grew up or where you were born or where you went to college or whatever corporate environment? I wonder if I'm still wearing the ghillie suit of that consulting firm in some little way, shape, or form, right?
Right. Well, and for that matter too, like just growing up, like people who, depending on their choice for sexual identification and things like that, because of religion or their parents' point of view, how many people had to wear ghillie suits only with the people that they feel most connected to and closest to, that they can't be their authentic self around those people, but they could be around strangers. Like how backwards of a society have we created where you have to hide who you are among the people that are closest to you? Not in every case, but a lot of cases that just is the space that we've created in this world.
Yeah. I mean, wow. I mean, and we were kind of talking about this yesterday as well, like that place where we get really stuck when we make ourselves right or when we buy when someone else is making us right, of like, oh, you're so calm, you're so whatever, you're the easy one, like, you never make a fuss about anything. That's a ghillie suit as well. Like that's a place where we're shutting down, some sort of receiving because, maybe we'd like to be really loud and outrageous sometimes. If we were being everything we are, what would actually be possible? What would we create?
And how many like stereotypical stories have you heard where somebody who's the minister's son, once they go to college, it's like game on, and they just are like the most crazy party child because they're like catching up for all the fun that they missed out on. I gotta get everything in, but that's another super valid point. Like how just wearing those suits to fit in for whatever the situation is. Crazy.
Well, and how many of you guys is being a chameleon also an incredible capacity as well? Like that's something to acknowledge in this conversation. I know that for me in high school, like I could be one thing with the theater people, and I could be one thing with the academic people, and I could be one thing with the artistic, like whatever group. I could kind of like, chameleon in with them. And that is a gift, to just like the chameleon, animal itself has that as a capacity. So what if that's totally an amazing gift as well?
It is, and as a healer, sometimes you do that because, well, in another modality I practice, they have the saying that you meet the person where they're at, and I think the same
Yeah.
is true of Access. Like, not there. How many tools are in Access? Hundreds, a lot of different tools, and depending on
Infinite.
right, and depending on a person's space and where they are in that moment, what tools are they willing and able to receive, and being able to match that and meet them wherever they're able and willing to receive is a beautiful gift. And I think it's parallels this energy of the communion. Like, how do you need to show up without sacrificing you for another person to receive what you have to contribute?
Yeah, and I mean, that's beautiful. You mentioned communion. Like, as you said that, this bird outside started chirping, and it just reminds me, like, we're all connected energetically, and when we're being that space of allowance, when we're being that rock in the stream, we're not separating from anyone or anything. We're being that definition of consciousness, that the definition of consciousness and access consciousness is that it includes everything and judges nothing.
When it comes to that, I have had, when I started doing these streams and talking about the tools like right and wrong, and it's just awareness and all that, I have been word vomited on. And but let me explain what that is. That is when somebody hears something that you say that triggers them so much that
Yeah.
they end up sending you like, I actually save them all because I find great, like I say, I'm going to read this and pot and pock me while I read it. So just in case I get caught up with it at all. But it's like where people really react because they're in a place of judgment or point of view about whatever you're talking about. So what would be a great tool for people who are in the space of, I love all this access consciousness stuff, but I don't know about that. Like we're triggering some of those deep implants from childhood or from religion or from whatever else.
I would say, what are the infinite possibilities for, well, number one, like, is for us to be in allowance of ourselves. I mean, that space of allowance when we're not aligning and agreeing, when we're not resisting and reacting is such an amazing gift. And what would it take to be that first for ourselves and for anyone else who is triggered by anything that we say or do? There are so many amazing tools in Access to deal with being triggered. I mean, I was just visiting family last week, so no implants were activated there.
The crazy statement would be perfect for that too, right?
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Yes, yes. The crazy phrase of Access is huge because, when someone's acting crazy, when you're acting crazy, when you're aware of crazy in the world. And we talk about it in the Access Consciousness bars class because it's such a vital tool. Is everything is the opposite of what it appears to be, and nothing is the opposite of what it appears to be, and everything is the opposite of what it appears to be, and nothing is the opposite of what it appears to be, and everything is the opposite of what it appears to be, and nothing is the opposite of what it appears to be. And lately, Gary and Dain have been talking about using it 100 times a day.
100 times a day. I'm gonna have to wake up a little bit
100.
earlier, get all that in. And for people who makes your head spin, like it really is this great tool. Like if you start to use it, I used to do it at the I had a different wording for it because before I found Access, this tool existed in a set a different way elsewhere. And I would use that tool, same energy. And when I was on the phone with somebody doing Bank Secrecy Act compliance, talking to a bad guy, people who were like really wishing harm upon me, I went by an alias. So like people couldn't look us up and get to us because we really ruined people's day that we're trying to do organized crime.
Right.
But anyway, when we're on that and I start using that energy tool, like they would just like kind of fizzle, and they would get off my phone, and other people would be arguing with people for like over an hour. They're like, how are you off the phone so fast? I'm just like, it's just magic, because I would have this tool that would put an energy spin on the situation that would create a space for us to get out of that. I'm trying to think of the access word for it. I know the shaman word for it, but like this polarity conflict. There we go. I have to get translated sometimes because I'm in like Shinaman land half the time and access land the other half of the time. But the cool thing is that I can translate almost everything back and forth between the two ways that I speak to people. So it's pretty cool.
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, there's so many, like the crazy phrase is certainly one of those things when you're triggered, when you're aware that someone else is triggered. And Hank's mentioned a couple times these things called implants. And it's one of the bars. So I would definitely say if you're triggered, like what are the infinite possibilities for you to get your bars run, to run someone's bars. And it's really helpful when you run bars, if someone's triggering you, if someone's upsetting you, if you've got a thing with someone or something, to talk about it and get your bars run, to really just spew, just give yourself the space of allowance of like, I'm just going to say whatever is up for me. And when you're getting your bars run, it's almost, I mean, purifying is the word that I'd like to say here, but it's really, I mean, I have a friend that I swap bars with, and we just give each other that space of like, this is up for me. And we just go. And then it's not even an issue anymore. And what if we could, number one, be that allowance for ourselves, and then be that gift for others as well.
One thing that I noticed happened to me a lot with people came for bars is they would end up telling their story anyhow.
Yeah.
so as they're telling the story to offer some facilitation around that, but while you're running the bars, and I would find myself based on what they were talking about, I would just change positions and run wherever the energy was where they were going. And I started calling them storytelling sessions. And some of them might last 3 hours, but it's not to the energy of them telling the story isn't for them to go, woe is me. It really is state the facts and let's shift the energy around it. Like using the crazy statement, using pot and pock, using like certain things, like something that really got stuck from childhood. I'm like, well, we're going to pause the bars for a moment. Let's go ahead and run cellular memory, which is another access tool. But really to follow the energy as they tell that, and they word vomit, get all that stuff out and create a space where all that is being left behind and being able to step into new possibilities without all those tethers holding down that hot air balloon. That's the analogy I like. That you're getting rid of all that weight that's holding you down from soaring into this new possibility with ease.
Yeah, and I mean the key thing there that you said is, not being caught up in the story. Yeah. I mean, one of the 10 keys to total freedom and access that we talk about in the foundation class, and that's in the book, 10 Keys to Total Freedom, is do not listen to, buy, or tell the story. And so when we're telling stuff like that with bars, it is to get free. It is because people use the story as a way to solidify their limitations and to justify and defend the limitations that they've already chosen. And when we're talking about the story with bars, we're actually doing it in a space and using this body process that allows us to actually get free of all of those considerations. So it is different when you're having your bars run, because it's hard to hold on to that story. It's like, oh yeah, wow, whatever that point of view is, I'm willing to give that up.
Yeah, but I found the link for that one too. I didn't realize that was a book in and of itself. I'm going to need a bigger bookshelf. No, I buy most of my books on Kindle anyhow now, but that's really great. I didn't realize that there's so much more to dive into with that. And I think there was also a telecall, or was that the call and they just made a book out of it, if you know?
Yeah, they made, it's a 10-call series, and Access Consciousness facilitators are required to listen to that. And they made the book of that. So the clearings from the series are in the book. So it's a really deep dive into the access tools. And if you're really looking to change an area of your life, in fact, I was just using this over the weekend. It was like, wow, which of these keys, which of these 10 keys would change the situation the most?
I
And then
think
I
we could.
read
Oh,
that
I'm sorry.
chapter.
Well, and two things. Well, one, Tina, I'm so sorry. I thought that was Amber's like a follow-up comment. When I put those two comments up earlier, I thought they were both from Amber, but one was from Amber and one was from Tina. So if it didn't quite flow, that's the reason why, because it was from two different people. And I just posted the link to that. That could be a whole just deep dive or a couple streams where we could talk about a couple of those 10
I
tools
would
to
love
total
to.
freedom. That would
Yeah,
be amazing. And
yeah,
for anybody listening here or on a replay, if it spawns something for you, make a comment if we're live. And if we're not live, make a comment and tag either Heather and or myself, because if you have a question, we're going to be doing these streams often enough where we can take any questions that come up after the fact. Just like yesterday, we had a question from Mary Lee, and we talked about that for the body's receiving for things like high blood pressure and things of that nature. But if you have any questions, or if it perks something for you, let us know, and we can always, talk about it in a future stream, and then we'll make sure we tag you in the description, like, hey, we talked about it here, and that way we can let you know. But tagging us is so important because we're streaming to like 12 places, and I have to be honest, I don't go back and look at the comments for every single place. So if you don't tag me or Heather, then we might miss it, and we don't want to ignore you at all. But it's like a lot of stuff to go back constantly and look at, like 100 different streams and comments. So
yeah.
because I stream a lot during the week, so there's a lot of destinations. But what's going on in your world that you would want us to talk about, offer inspiration around to help facilitate change and possibility with ease in your life?
Yeah. I mean, what are the infinite possibilities for us to remove, to let go of, to take off all of those ghillie suits that we've put on to fit in, to blend into the foliage of this reality? And what could we create that's so far beyond it? I mean, what can you choose that no one else can?
Yeah, and there's kind of a reverse energy of this too that just I'm aware of. In Simone's book, I think Joy of the Business, but it might have been her other one. She was talking about how she went to look for a house, and there was one area that the realtor was taking her to, and she's like, oh, I can't afford it. And so she's putting herself in a place of judgment about a situation she's being put in, kind of reverse saying, oh, I'm not like them,
Hmm.
and then not being able to see herself receiving the money that it would take to live somewhere. So this is kind of like, I think, like you're not wearing a ghillie suit where you're excluding yourself from that, but you're not willing to be the energy where you would fit in, or you're afraid that you would be wearing a ghillie suit. You feel where I'm going with that? It's like the energy of, I
Oh
don't,
yeah.
yeah,
Oh yeah. I mean, and that's really like a lot of what we talk about in the advanced how to become money workbook of and it's about what are you not willing to be, that if you were willing to be, it would allow you to have and actualize what you'd really like to have in life.
yeah. And give yourself permission to consider the things you never would have considered. When my wife and I were moving from the east side of Cleveland, we used to live in Euclid, and we were looking at cities where we wanted to live, and Westlake was one of the cities. Well, we thought about it, but like, well, we don't really have the budget to live there. But we said, well, let's go ahead and we're going to look at houses anyway. And then the perfect house at the perfect price showed up, and then we ended up being able to get it even for lower. So even if like you don't think that the money could show up for something, like, well, what else is possible with that? Because there's always scenarios and things that spirit lines up. Or there's some fun things with Gary, who I think and sold real estate, facilitating a little bit of contribution from the unseen world in order to be able to buy things that he might not have been able to buy other ways and make possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, what have you, I mean, that really gets to the heart of like, what have you decided is not possible that actually is possible for you, that if you would allow the possibilities would make everything greater and easier and more fun for you.
Ooh, and that's the key thing too at the end there, and more fun for you. Everything that you choose to create for yourself, you can add that element of fun. It doesn't have to be work.
Yeah.
Ooh, and you have to work hard to get ahead. You have to work hard to get ahead. You have to work hard to get ahead. How to
Oh my gosh, yes, everything that is. Can we all destroy and uncreate it?
Yeah.
Wow. Right, wrong, good, bad, only, pop shirts, boys and beyonds. And that's it, how for how many of us is that one of the ghillie suits and one of those areas of positive judgment that we carry around with us, where we've been told that we're a good hard worker and you come in earlier and stay later than anyone else, and you're so right for that.
And I've noticed in the foundation class and other classes I've had with you, because I did it to myself now when I realized that I'm saying one of these little hidden implant things that you will tell people you'll tell people to say it 3 times. Is there any significance to having people do that? Like I
Mhm.
self-facilitated there because I'm like, oh, this is a big trigger. Uh,
Yeah.
but what
Yeah.
contribution could that be to people when they realize that there's something so ingrained to be able to call that out and add more illumination and potency to changing it?
Well, one other book that I'd recommend, because you've mentioned a couple times this thing called implants, and what an implant is, and um, is it's an implanted idea or point of view, kind of something like what Hank just said of you have to work hard to get money, or you have to work hard to get ahead, or whatever that is. It's these little phrases that kind of drop out, and you're like, oh, yeah, that.
Money is the root of all evil.
Exactly. That's a huge one. And there was one yesterday on the stream that we cleared. And it's all these things that are secret and hidden and invisible and covert, etc. And there's a great book that really dives deeply into this whole idea of implants, and it's called Living Beyond Distraction. And that too was based on a series of telecalls. And it's something in access consciousness that we call the distractor implants. And I know for me, this was so incredibly powerful when I discovered this information in access. And it's great with when you're dealing with people who are functioning from them, or you find yourself functioning from them. And it can, it's so easy to not buy them and make and unravel that energy. You recognize them for what they are. They're things like anger, rage, jealousy, uh, things like that can kind of stick us and put us in this place where we almost seem trapped, but we're not. That's the key thing. What if we're not trapped in that? What if there is an easy and simple tool to free ourselves from that?
Yeah, and that was perfectly timed because I just got the link from Amazon. So I posted the
Yay.
link in Amazon to Living Beyond Distraction. I'm just having the awareness of how many of these telecalls have actually turned into books. And
Yeah.
what a wonderful way to make it so accessible, because the telecalls, they come at a much different price tag than the books. But the energy is different. When you hear the actual energy on the call, it's definitely worthwhile. But if you are in a place where you want to dive in, but not all the way in, you want to have like your little life jacket or something, like get the books. And they're so good. And now I have like 2 more I have to get and read, or I'm going to choose to get and read. See, I don't have to do anything. I'm an infinite being, but I'm going to choose to do things that bring me more peace and possibility and all that. So let's see. There was a comment. Okay, so Amber was just contributing that she called it hacking back into my kid brain. So that's like the energy of like pot and pock and getting to the implants. But the ghillie suits work too. It must have worked. I used to be lonely, and then last summer a kitten showed up at my house, and all the neighborhood kids started coming over to visit the cat. But they started asking me to hang out with them too. I have visitors most days now, and will every day when it's warm again. Wow, what a wonderful thing! And like just something little like that, like a cute cat coming into your life, like how much more possibility and fun and opportunities to see the children and have that maybe reawaken or re-illuminate something where you've been stuck, and being able to process through that. That's awesome. And let's see. And she didn't actually, I changed my attitude, and the kitten and kid friends showed up. So yeah, like that says a lot
Brilliant.
about
Yeah.
point of view, like where the space you're coming from, like what is it magnetizing into or telling the universe to bring you.
Well, yeah, and I mean that illustrates so beautifully what we talk about in access, which is that your point of view creates your reality. So if you have the point of view that, life is so hard and I can't be different, then that's exactly what's going to show up for you. But if you were willing to let go of that point of view or consider a different point of view, then what else could show up for you? And one amazing way, because when I say that to people, it often puts this question in the world of like, well, how do I get rid of my point of view? How do I change my point of view? And that's where we get to the beauty of access consciousness bars or the clearing statement. Because with access bars, you can lay on a table and with a 60 to 90-minute session or longer if you're really lucky, just really have that beauty of letting go of so many different points of view.
I have to, just the energy behind this, I wanted to bring it up that there is a difference between using the tools of access and being the tools of access, and start using them. But like Dr. Dain, he had a call, and I think they even updated like all the facilitator agreements to include a "don't be a dick" clause.
Yes.
And one of the things, and there was a lot of things that potentially inspired this, because they gave some examples. It's like, oh, well, that would probably mean that somebody actually did that. But one of the early versions of that, I remember there was a call with Dr. Dain who said the interesting point of view tool, the space that you're holding is the interesting point of view. But using the tool, and I actually had an access class where a facilitator did this, but I won't mention the name, but they were like, interesting point of view that you have that point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And they like, zing, like there was like this energy behind it where there was a judgment attached to the interesting point of view. And so what would it take for everybody to really be the energy of the tool and not just using the tool?
Well, exactly. And that's the gift that we can all be with interesting point of view, is when we're willing to be with someone with total allowance of ourselves and them. And anywhere anyone wasn't in allowance of us and stuck us with their point of view or their judgment or their belief, can we all destroy and uncreate all of that?
Yes.
Right, wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all nine shirts, boys and beyond. And yes, it is part of the access contracts that, not being a dick.
But even their way of just putting it like, that's the clause. It's like, don't be a dick.
Yeah, and I mean, we all get the energy of that. Like, that's kind of the opposite of the benevolent capitalism that we were talking about. Like, really recognize, like, is this choice going to create more? What is this choice going to create? I mean, we always have that millisecond, that nanosecond, before we make the choice. Okay, well, what is this choice going to create? What is saying this going to create? What is choosing this going to create?
Ooh, and that reminds me of one of my favorite access sayings before I share things with people, which is just for me, just for fun,
Oh,
never
yeah.
tell anyone. And what I had found is there were some people that I would be really excited about an inspiration, about a possibility, and then I would go and I would share it to someone even close to me. And I described it as like, after they came back and said the next thing after that, it was like if you were blowing up a balloon and just stopped and let go of it, all my possibility went where if you ask a question, will be telling Heather about this create a possibility, or will it be a contribution to what I'm looking to create, or is it going to take away? Like asking that question and then only sharing the things with your inspirations with people that are going to be a contribution and add to the possibility versus maybe take away. That is an amazing tool, but it's a temporary tool, because once you get to the point of, I don't care about your point of view, that's like a stepping stone tool that I use. At least that's the way I look at it, because if you're really in a place where you aren't getting caught up with other people's points of views, projections, expectations, judgments, conclusions about what you're doing, then that tool isn't as relevant as if you're in the space where you're really impacted by other people's judgments about what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And wow, yeah, just for me, just for fun, never tell anyone. Yeah.
Plus, I like corny rhymes, which everybody knows. So anything that rhymes like that, I'm totally going to be loving it. And just a reminder for those, we have about 10 minutes, 10 minutes or less left. So this is the time. Ask your questions, ask your comments. If there's a topic you'd like us to bring up and like kind of focus around, like today, the theme is Dare to Be Different. And a lot of the access tools overlap, but you're going to get the tools in a whole bunch of different ways. And which way is going to be the way that's going to make everything click for you, so you start to be the tool instead of using the tool. Because there is a shift. Gary says you get it when you get it. And when you start to shift into being the tool, oh man, it's a whole nother level of possibility. So what would it take for you to get to that with total ease. But let us know like what topics and questions you'd like us to dive into on future streams. And if you, I'm going to have to make a bigger webpage now, but all the streams that Heather and I have been doing, yesterday's hasn't been added yet, but all the past ones, if you want to catch them, are going to be at emergenceofbeing.com/possibility. And I'm going to add a link at the top there later today for a playlist on YouTube, because I'm going to put all of our stuff on the YouTube channel under one playlist. So you can go back all the Power Possibility podcasts, which is what these are going to become. They're all going to be in one playlist if you do want to binge watch it. And right now they are being posted to my podcast, The Sonic Shaman, which is post a link to it. If you want to download the audio versions, it's there. But I'm also going to be putting all of this on one whole separate podcast, which is just going to be the Access Consciousness Power Possibilities, whether it's me, whether it's Heather, if we maybe have another CF or Access person on future calls, it's going to be all Access focused content because it has its own vibe. And then the other channel is going to be more of this, the other phenomena content, because it's all like the same thing, different vocabulary, different energies, but we also like to be respectful of the energy of what Access is in the world and stick to that as best. Of course, I'm going to screw up because I have to bring a phenomena thing in every once in a while. But to the best of our ability, we're keeping it Access focused on these particular streams, which has a whole space of possibility in and of itself.
Yeah. Access is an amazing movement in the world.
Yeah, I was just grabbing what link was I going to grab? Oh, I was going to get the podcast link. That's what I was doing. So, well, let me ask you a question, Heather. Was there any particular question or thing that you were hoping to talk about today that hasn't been talked about, that if you were to talk about would change everything with total ease?
I love that question. That's so much fun. Well, I mean, I'm so grateful for all the amazing things that we were able to talk about, because on these live streams or in any Access class, we can only really talk about what people are willing to receive and willing to hear. And so thank you guys. I'm so grateful for where we've been able to go today. And the only other thing I would add to the distractor implant conversation is that those are really designed to take you away from being you and creating everything that you're capable of creating. So anytime that you recognize that you're functioning from a distractor implant, or someone's distractor implants are activated around you, you can just recognize it for what it is and use the tools and change it, because it's so easy. You don't have to make it true and real. You don't have to buy it and get caught up in it. You can keep creating and choosing and being you. And so that can be an enormous source of difference and freedom when you're willing to just be aware of them. Because that's the cool thing about that book or the telecall series, or we cover them in the foundation class as well, is that you have that awareness. And that is an amazing potency that's available to you.
Awesome. And I just did post the links. There's one link to the Apple podcasts, but if you go to my website, hanksetala.com, there's also links to Spotify and other ones. I just provided the Apple one as a link because I didn't want to post a whole bunch of links. And there is a link I just posted to this video on the YouTube channel. And what I'd like to invite you to do is, what contribution could you be to our work in helping to spread the contagion of consciousness?
Yes.
And one of those things, a small thing, but a huge thing, is to take a moment to share the video on YouTube. Click the like button, the little thumbs up is like a huge thing. If you make a comment afterwards, like, that's all things that the technology beings say are important for the algorithm. So how could you help us befriend the algorithm entities of the internet to help reach more people by taking the time to share, subscribe, make comments, thumbs up. Even if you go back and you find all the videos and you just thumbs up them all that is telling it's relevant. And what if because one little thing you did to contribute to us caused 100 other people to see it and to have change show up in their life? So it's a small thing, but it's a huge thing. What contribution could you be?
Yeah. And what would it take for everyone who's been really seeking this to be able to find it is now the time.
Yeah. All of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. That is the
Yes,
mantra of Access. And they
yes.
said that that is like a wake up call to
Yeah,
humanity. Like when people that are the humanoids and that are fine, like
the
being called to be the
seekers
change in the
of the
world,
world.
when you say that, it's just like, wow, you know what? That's our natural state. All of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. I'm getting caught up in the trauma and drama, but that's the truth of it. That's the natural state of what you can be experiencing, and it doesn't have to come hard. It really doesn't. We were taught that it does, but it doesn't have to.
I
It,
know, yeah.
uh, a likely scam. Oh no, I forgot to turn it on. Well, that's going to be a whole nother stream for me. Banker Hank Cat has to come out a couple Fridays a month. That's been like a lot of, maybe there's some access we can do around it too. The amount of people taking advantage of, it's not just elderly, but like scam scenarios where people send $50,000 away to
Yep.
things like that. That has been showing up in my reality a lot recently. So maybe we can plan an access spin on on something like that, because it's just really unfortunate. And I'm going to be creating some content around that, because that's what I did with Bank Secrecy Act compliance. Is
Ooh, that's
that like
so juicy. Yeah.
because yeah, so there's like a lot of that going on, and I would just love to create some content that will be really educational, but also give people some tools to shift out of the place where they would be willing to be taken advantage of, being like the kill energy and access. When it comes to situations like that, already we're getting the spin on it. We're getting the spin. Uh, so Mary Lee was saying, I love it. We have Anne
How
Marie
does it get
saying,
better?
yes, love things and ideas that come to me with ease. Great words too. And we have,
Yay.
I'm going to mispronounce your name, so I won't pronounce it at all. But we have somebody else saying, I love listening to you guys. Really vibration rising. Thank you so much.
Yay. Thank you. How to get better than that? That's so
Yeah.
much fun. Yeah, and I love those ideas. I mean, there's so many fun things that we can do with access tools. And it's not just about things in our own lives. We can look at the whole world too. And that's, for all of you guys who are on the Access database, and or certain things go out to people who've taken at the very least a bars class, calls with Gary and Dain, where we look at what can we shift in the world. And
Yeah.
we can always, for things like, Hank was just talking about, people who scam or take advantage, or people who are, doing this, we can look at, okay, well, would I be willing to destroy and create everything I created or chose in any lifetime that allows that to exist? Right, wrong, good, bad, all nine, pod, poc, shorts, boys, and beyonds. And that's where we become this change in the whole world.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I'm already so excited to create this. What else is possible? And by the way, folks, in the bottom, this little hashtag in the bottom right of the video, that stands for how does it get any better than this? So when you're sharing the possibilities that show up in your life on Facebook or Instagram or wherever you share content, put that hashtag in there. And people are, I can't tell you how many times somebody will message you, be like, what does this mean? And then it opens up this whole door of possibility of like what this little hashtag means. And it's a great opportunity for people, because that something about it's connecting with them, because now they got to ask. So
Yes.
it's a nice little trick. So help be the contagion of consciousness by using that. Or the other one is WEIP, which is what else is possible. Two little
Yeah.
quick hashtags that have like this little energy of access to them that you can start adding to things that you're posting. And if for extra fun, tag me and Heather, and then we'll like your post.
Yay. Yes. What are the infinite possibilities?
And finally, the website emergenceofbeing.com/possibility. We do have all the content that we've made, almost all the content we made so far. And the way that it's organized on the page as you go from top to bottom is relevant to some classes that are coming up with Heather in the Cleveland area. All of them can be taken remotely. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. For the bars class, you do need to have a plus
You need
one.
to be local.
You got for the bars class, either local or you got to have two people that want to take the class. But we're going to be able to stream it. So you can take things remotely, and then some of the things are telecalls. So check all of that out. I'm excited for all of them, but the How to Become Money workbook one especially has changed my life time and time again. And it's not about money; it's about receiving. Well, it is about money, but it's about receiving and busting through every place where you're not willing to receive. It's so good. So any final thought now that I've plugged our stuff? I totally forgot about it, but our main goal is really to get the content out. And then if you would like to accept an invitation for something else, that is awesome too. And all that information is at emergenceofbeing.com/possibility.
Yeah, it would be so fun to have you guys.
Oh, the entities were messing with us right at the end. Well, oh, they're telling me you need to stop now. Otherwise, you're going to have to edit the video because it'll be at over an hour. So we'll catch you next time, guys. Thank you so much for showing up.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for joining us today for the show. The Sonic Shaman is part of the Emergence of Being Contributor Network. Visit emergenceofbeing.com to learn about all the contributors and learn about our services and upcoming events. Please take a moment to subscribe